thinker. I mean, at a time when the kind of stuff he was interested in and willing to try was really risky. I mean, that could get you called a nutcase. And he just, he believed and he wanted to try ESP experiments, but he wanted to learn more about the universe and kept a really open mind. And as you know very well, formed this Noetics Institute and just did some really fine work.
I miss him.
Yeah, I mean, I miss all those guys. They were all fascinating and wonderful in their own ways, and there are just so few of them left. And, you go to a convention or a show where they used to be able to get 6 or 7 or 8 of these gents, and now there might be 2 or 3. So.
Of the original Mercury 7 astronauts, are there any still alive?
Don't believe so.
They're all gone.
They're all gone, yeah, and Apollo's getting dangerously close as well.
Yeah, they sure are. They sure are. It's funny, we knew the names of the astronauts. Nobody knows anybody anymore.
Well, there's a lot of them now.
Yeah.
The classes get bigger and bigger. There's going to be a lot more flying. There's certain kids are going to know the ones that go up in 26, 27, or 28, though, because we're going to have a person of color and the first woman and so forth, and I think those names are going to become prominent. And, that's one of those, you talk about benefits of the space program, which is always a tough conversation. NASA needs to do better at telling their story. They've been trying for over half a century, and it's a struggle. It's not, it's not their first duty. That's something that people like me are supposed to help do, but it's so inspirational. And you look at Elon Musk, and you look at Jeff Bezos, and whatever you think of those guys, they were inspired by the Apollo program. Lots of people were inspired by that, and we need something new to do that. And I just would like to relate an incident. I was interviewing Gene Kranz years ago for an Apollo documentary I was doing for the History Channel about 2005. And at the end of the interview, I said, Mr. Kranz, is there anything else you'd like to say? And, normally after you talk to these guys for an hour, they go, that's about it. And he said, yes. And he looked at me with those steely missile man eyes and said, what America will dare, America can do. And it just gave me chills. And he's right. We just have to put our minds to it.
Absolutely. Let's go to the phones. Brian in Indianapolis, welcome to the program. Hi, Brian.
Hey, George, good morning. How are you?
Great, Brian. Hope you are too.
Oh, I'm doing awesome. Hey, Rod, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for calling in.
Awesome. Hey, listen, George, you got to have Tommy show you the picture I sent him with these binocular telescopes I got.
Okay.
I got a BT-100 Orion binocular telescope that I can use during the day or night, and it is excellent for looking at the moon, especially during the day.
What did it cost you?
Oh, it wasn't cheap. I'll tell you that.
They're really nice, though.
Oh, they are. They're excellent. I mean, and it's well worth the money. But I've been looking at your books. I think I'm going to buy a couple of your books. I've been looking at your website. It took me a couple hours to get this question together, and when I ask it, when I say this, I'm a 61-year-old redneck, but I'm going to sound like Dr. Travis Taylor, a scientist.
Okay.
Okay. Now, let me start this right. Is the universe infinite? Okay. Now, if it is infinite, how is it expanding? And if it isn't infinite, is there an edge to the universe? And I'll just take my answer off there because I got to listen to this.
Okay.
Good luck with that one, Rod.
Yeah, George, you didn't tell me I was going to be taking my PhD exam today.
Exactly.
So this is why I became a journalist, so I could interview really smart people and not have to know all this stuff myself. And I don't know that answer. I mean, I think I know as much as most of us do, which is, space-time is curved, and you see illustrations where they're trying to explain how all this works, but honest to God, I still don't get it. And I've read Stephen Hawking, and I've read, the astronomy texts I had when I was studying at UCLA, which of course is a long time ago now, so a lot of that's dated, but it's just not something I really have enough expertise in to comment on, I'm afraid.
It is just truly remarkable. If it is expanding, what is it expanding into? What's on the other side?
Well, that's where our understanding is so limited, and within this area that we're talking about expanding, we still haven't figured out about dark matter and so forth. And this huge percentage of all the mass in the universe. What is it? Where is it? Why is it so hard to see and understand? And it's mind-bending to read this.
And it has weight to it, doesn't it?
Apparently.
It's solid, yeah.
Yeah.
Strange times.
Well, that may be one of those things, we talk a lot, and you talk on your show about some of the weird phenomenon that is seen off Earth. And, maybe when we understand that better, some of this stuff will make more sense.
Next up, we've got Shad in Bismarck, North Dakota. Welcome to the program. Hi, Shad. Go ahead.
Hi, George, and thank you for taking my call. And I
Thank you.
appreciate your show every night. I enjoy listening to you and to Rod as well.
Thank you.
I just turned 50 this year, and I read a book about 20 years ago that I cannot remember the name of. I wish I could, but I'm just curious about your thoughts, Rod, about you guys have touched on the dark side of the moon. In this particular book, it talked about there's the reason why we have not been back to the moon is because we basically got told not to come back. I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
I heard that rumor as well. That we were basically told by ETs, don't come back.
Yeah, and, this is one of those things that I can't prove or disprove. I can have an opinion, but I will say, let me just take it a step way beyond. When I talk to groups where there might be some folks who think, I don't think we really landed on the moon and so forth. And if you spend a couple of decades, close to 30 years for me, I guess, going through this stuff, going to the archives, looking at the machines, the Saturn V's that didn't fly, the lunar modules, talking to the moonwalkers, the other astronauts, talking to the guys in mission control. If it's some kind of conspiracy, it is way more efficient than anything I've seen in any branch of government in my life. And as you know, people aren't very good at keeping secrets over decades, and especially, you talk to some of these guys, and I'm thinking now about the astronauts, the moonwalker, the Apollo class. As they get older, most of them their 80s, and they're all at least their 80s or 90s now, and they get very reflective and very philosophical, and they start looking back on life, and they talk differently, and they feel differently, and they think differently. And if there was some big secret, I think we'd know it by now. I also think, there were other nations. There was the Soviet Union was trying to get to the moon at the same time we were, and they had moved it with uncrewed spacecraft, and we had both, of course, sent out lots of robotic probes. So wouldn't they be told the same thing? And I don't know the answer to that.
Buzz Aldrin, of course, still with us, second man to walk on the moon, and he looks great for 93.
He is, we're friends. I talk to him a couple times a year, and I haven't seen him since before the pandemic, but that was not that many years ago. He still walks ramrod straight, much better posture than I've got. Flat stomach, alert with it. He's got a new, younger wife that he just married, as you know, and he's just an amazing guy. I think the thing that really strikes me about him when we have conversations is, he's brilliant, obviously, but you get this feeling that there's like three minds in there all competing for the same mouth, because he's got so much to say.
Yeah.
Always thinking about advancing the human race, moving things forward, getting out there, and that's just an incredible thing.
Just don't tell him to swear on a Bible if you went to the moon.
Well, be ready to duck if you do.
Tom in La Jolla, California is with us now. Hey, Thomas, go ahead.
Hi, George. Thank you for accepting my call. Rod, it's always great to hear your interviews. And I'm going to ask a question about a concept, an idea that was very popular about, 45 years ago. And that was the idea of having a power habitat in geosynchronous orbit around the Earth. And what it would do is it would collect sunlight, obviously outside of the Earth atmosphere,
Right.
and then convert that, beam it down by microwaves down to the surface of the Earth. And the idea behind this was that it was supposed to free the Earth from fossil fuels. I first heard the idea in a lecture from Coast to Coast guest, now deceased, Jerry Pournell,
Yeah.
about 1980. And he spoke extensively in this lecture about how, you would, put up a power satellite like that, a power habitat, excuse me. And that would actually be fairly cheap to construct, then have it beamed down. You collect the sunlight outside the Earth's atmosphere, and then you beam down by microwaves to the Earth's surface, where the microwaves are converted into electrical energy, and it would bypass the desire to use fossil fuels. Jerry Pournelle used to say that it would totally get us off our dependence of fossil fuels. I'm curious if that idea is still afloat, in the space community.
Very much so. And the group that I publish and edit Ad Astra magazine for is National Space Society. We go to their website, nss.org. They've got a lot of material on space solar power, and we work extensively with John Mankins, who is probably the leader, at least in the U.S. at this point, in thinking on that topic. So as you mentioned, this was first suggested in the U.S. with a number of technical papers back in the 70s, pursued a little bit, kind of fell off here. The investment stopped happening. It didn't seem realistic, especially given the technology at the time. But, when we turned our back on it, Japan and later China said, this is a good idea. Now, the technology had advanced a little more by then, but not enough to make it doable. China is now looking at it very strongly. They've been doing some experiments, actually, not in orbit yet, but in transmitting, experimenting with this conversion of microwave and reconversion back down to electricity over distances. And now, of course, if we hope that SpaceX and Elon will get Starship flying in the next few months, if that works as planned, and it's behind, because Elon time is always very aspirational, but if that works as planned, the economics begin to pan out much better for being able to lift enough mass to do what you're talking about, which is build a system of multiple solar power stations in orbit that are beaming down to the surface. And where it comes down, there are people that are concerned about, well, what about the surface, death rate, so forth. No, it's microwaves or some other form of electromagnetism, and you've got a rectangle on the ground which just looks like miles and miles of wires, and you could actually even farm underneath those rectangles because it would be sufficiently spread out that sunlight would come through it. So it's really a very benign technology, and as you point out, could go a long way towards getting us off fossil fuels. We'd still have the issue of power storage, which is something that really bedevils the power industry, the electrical industry. But because these things can be positioned to be in sunlight 24/7, you may not have to store it, and assuming you could get an international consortium together and be cooperative, it really changes the balance of economics. It begins to potentially alleviate poverty and electrify parts of the world that have never even been close to having a power grid.
Let's go to first-time caller Derek in Louisiana. Welcome to the program. Hello, Derek. Go ahead.
Hey, George. Well, I've been pondering over here. I have a few points that I wanted to talk about.
Sure.
One being, and hello, Rod. Nice to speak to you also.
Hi, likewise.
Yes, sir. The first one, because of a couple of these callers got my mind working overtime right now, how I observe around me physically, like the physical world that I live in. The second thing would be speaking about power also, and then just a question. The third would be a question. The first one is what I observed with the moon, and what I've done with, like, you can go to O'Reilly's and buy a temperature gauge, and when I stand in the moonlight and I shoot the thermometer on the ground, in the shade of my shadow is warmer. It reads a hotter temperature, and I've done it like a couple times, so you could say it's a scientific experiment. And then when you shoot it in the moonlight, it registers cooler. So would that be saying that the moon would be another light source that is transmitting cooler energy? The second topic I wanted you to talk on would be maybe, like you said, with these magnetic waves, well, it's really about the pyramids. Would they have ancient technology to actually create energy or store energy and the ley lines of the Earth? And I guess that would tie into, or maybe I'm off basis with this, but like with Nikola Tesla, which Elon Musk got, I guess, his same company, but all of his work when he was doing those Tesla towers and the different ley lines in the Earth and gathering energy from that. And
All right, take a few of those before we run out of time before the half. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the work of Tesla is something that people still scratch their head over. You know, could it have worked had he been able to keep moving forward with it? Obviously, he beat Edison at Edison's own game when it came ultimately to alternating current and so forth. In terms of how that may have played into ancient structures and so forth, you know, your guess is as good as mine. I'm going to Alien Con in a couple of weeks here in Southern California, which is being put on by the same people that do the Ancient Alien Show. And I hope to learn more about it while I'm there, because I'm curious. You know, you look at the pyramids, and it's quite easy to think, well, yeah, they were clever, and they stacked a bunch of rocks, and that's pretty cool, but they did it in Latin America, too. When you look at the ones in Egypt, North Africa, it truly is, and I know you talked about this on the show a lot, the dynamics of doing that are hard to do now. So, how it happened at the time puzzles the heck out of me. As far as your first question goes, I don't have an answer. I can only tell you that the surface of the moon is many hundreds of degrees Fahrenheit when it is in the sun for 2 weeks, and then when it is in the dark for 2 weeks, it's a couple hundred, I think 250 below Fahrenheit. So you're obviously not measuring that from the ground with a thermometer, if that's what you're asking.
Rod, how did Jupiter end up with so many moons?
That's still one of the things to play, which is why we want to send more spacecraft out there, because we need orbiters, you know, that can do flybys of that system again and again to really observe. As far as I understand it, and I think it is still the prevailing view, is that the ancient solar system, you know, there's a lot of crud floating around out there, and that these things accreted into solid moons, particularly in Jupiter's case, of course, because it is the most massive thing.
92 moons. Up to 92 moons.
Is that the number now?
Yeah.
Can you imagine the werewolf problem they have there?
My God.
Sorry. So yeah, I mean, beyond that, it's just you get into discussions of, you know, where was Jupiter in the ancient solar system, and did it move in, did it move out, how did it affect the other planets? It really is the bully of the solar system. I mean, it pushes everything around and determines what was happening around it. And interestingly, other solar systems don't all kind of work out the same way. You know, some of them have Jupiter-type planets, a lot of them don't. So it's an interesting question that we got to get out there and learn more about it.
We're coming back with final calls in a moment on Coast to Coast AM.
Join the Coast to Coast AM Facebook page with thousands of members. It's great for show updates and connecting with other fans. Go to facebook.com/Coast to Coast AM and click the like button.
George Dory, and this is Coast to Coast AM on KSRO.
When news happens, KSRO is on top of it with our Marconi Award-winning news team. From traffic incidents and weather advisories to breaking news and local information, Sonoma County's Morning News with Michelle Marquez and Larry Olson. Weekday mornings at 6.
Sonoma County's FM News Talk, KSRO. Sonoma County's News Talk, KSRO.